Thank you very much. Tonight's shiur is Le'ilu Nishmat Avi Mori Dov Ber Meir Ben Ruven Alevi Imi Merati Rachel Bat Harav Michael. And it should be a zechut for their neshama and a refuah shlema for all of the cholim and all of the recovering cholim. So I understand that Baruch Hashem, our numbers here, at least in Eretz Yisrael, for the virus are significantly down. Baruch Hashem. I can't say that for the rest of the world, but the Bezrat Hashem, we should continue at least seeing improvement in that too. So, parshat Korach, I always refer to a mission in Pirkei Avot. This is in the 5th parak, which begins with, which tells us that Kol Machloket Shi L'Shem Shemayim Sofa Litkayem V'She'ein L'Shem Shemayim Ein Sofa Litkayem. I forgot to copy it into the source notes, but anyway, you'll see. Here we go. Okay, and away we go. The parsha of Korach deals with Korach. And it's interesting because you'll notice that in verse Aleph of the parsha, I've got 3 different colors going on. I have yellow for Korach, I have blue for Datan and Aviram, we have purple for On Ben Pelet, and then in Pasuk Bet we have Anashim Mibnei Yisrael Chamishim U'Matayim. So there seem to be a number of different constituencies all involved in this events that are going to be recorded in this week's parsha. So let's start with the beginning, and you'll notice that the first pasuk sounds a little strange because it starts with a vayikach, a singular verb, and then it lists the name of 4 different individuals. It says, so if I were to translate this into English, it would translate as, and Korach, the son of Yitzhar, the son of Levi, the son of Chas, the son of Levi, took, and Datan and Aviram, the sons of Eliav, and On, the son of Pelet, who was the son of Reuven. So we don't know. I mean, the first half of the pasuk is very clear that Korach took something, but we don't know. Did he take Datan and Aviram? Did he take On ben Pelet, or were they part of this taking? We don't really know. And the Parshanim go all over with this Vayikach, but it appears that somehow, and Rashi very simply says, Lokach et atzmo letzad echad, that he took himself, that Korach took himself outside, away from the community, or he set himself up apart from the community. And that is very similar, or at least it seems to be the same direction as the Targum, as Onkelos says, the it peleg, which means he separated. The flog is to divide in half. So he basically divided himself in half from the rest of the community. And then Datan and Aviram and On ben Pelet, again, firstly, Datan and Aviram are going to appear. You'll notice if you just, as I go down, you'll see the blue appears again, yellow appears again, green appears again, purple disappears after the first pasuk. So On ben Pelet there's a wonderful medrash on On ben Pelet, who was who at least appears in verse Aleph as one of the 4 potential leaders of this difference of opinion, and yet disappears. And of course, the Medrash, very well-known Medrash, says that basically his wife said to him, what are you getting involved? Either way, you're going to be the second in command, third in command, fourth in command. You're not going to be the top guy. So just forget about it. And, she convinces him to drop out of the ranks. And there's all sorts of midrashim about how she was able to convince him to do that, whether she had to basically get him drunk or do other things. But it's interesting that he appears in the beginning and then just completely disappears from the story. So the midrash has to make something up. Now, there are among the Parshanim who say, well, he's listed as an important person, but then he is subsumed in the group of the 250. He's just one of the 250. But again, if we look at the parsha as it develops, we will find that there was not one group rebelling here against Moshe. There were at least two different groups. And that's why you'll notice, as I've said, I've separated the rest of the parasha, the first pasuk, into 2 different columns. And it's interesting because the length of the description in in how this develops is very long on the right side and very short on the left side here. And yet we're going to see later on, when it comes to the punishment meted out to them, we're going to have a much larger left-hand side and a rather small right-hand side. So it's interesting, the juxtaposition here of how the things work here in terms of what's going on. So, and I wanted to focus a little bit on what's happening here. So firstly, on the right-hand side of the screen, which has lots of yellows called Korach, it seems as though Korach is a leader of group number 1. And then later on, we see that Datan and Aviram seem to be the spokesman for group number 2. And as I said, On Ben Pellet disappears, whether he was the spokesman for a third group that just, melded or blended into one of the other two, or he wasn't a spokesman, or he just got involved and then got disinvolved. We don't know. But to go to the right-hand side, where we read about the first part of this. Okay, Vayakumu. Now, interestingly enough, after we had Vayikach, one of them taking, it says Vayakumu, they got up lifnei Moshe. Vanashim ibnei Yisrael chamishim u'matim. So now we've gone back to the plural. It seems that all 4 of these, or at least 3 of these, got up before Moshe, and they brought with them 250 people who were all Nesiei Edak, Kriei Moed, Anshe Shem. They're all men of stature. They're all well-known leaders. And Vayikalu al Moshe v'al Haron, they congregated upon Moshe and Aaron and said, everybody is holy. Why do you think that you should be? Why do we need Kohanim? Why do we need Leviim? Everybody's holy. God says, Kadoshim to you. We're supposed to all be a holy nation. What do I need leaders for? Now, you know that somebody who says, what do I need leaders for? You know what happens when there's no leadership? It means anarchy. So we clearly, much as we often have problems with our leaders, we cannot do without leaders. Leaders are a necessary requirement for running certain communal functions. You have to have people who are involved. And if everybody, if there's no leadership, then there's nobody responsible, which means, if everybody is responsible, it means nobody's responsible and it's not going to get done. So we need some type of leadership. And that's, I think, really, if we go back and try to understand what the Torah is trying to teach us in parshat Korach, is that we need to have leaders who are willing to stand up for their principles. That's what's one of the things. And the second thing is we have to have followers who are willing to go along with those leaders and accept their leadership. So these are the two sides of the coin that we're talking, that this parsha seems to be focusing on. Not only leadership, but the fact that we have to be able to have leaders that we feel comfortable following. Because clearly, we have Korach as a leader, we have Datan and Aviram as leaders, but they are not leading us in the correct direction. So that's why where our leaders are going is a very, very critical component of this story. Now, Moshe gives a lengthy response to Korach in verses 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. The Torah spends 8 whole verses describing Moshe's response to Korach. And basically what he is saying to Korach, if we go through all of this dialogue, he's saying, look, some of you are Levium, some of you are otherwise, but you have to understand that you have been given these jobs. I didn't make this up on my own. Hashem is the one who decided this. Hashem is the one who picked Aaron to be the Kohen. He picked his sons to be the Kohanim with him. He is the one who took away the privilege from the firstborn and gave it to the tribe of Levi. This was not my decision. And by coming and complaining about this, you're not complaining to me, you're complaining to God. Now, if you have a complaint with God, that's legitimate, maybe, but God is the one who said this, not me, so don't come complaining to me. Now, then he also says to them, if you really think that I'm making this up, if that's really your opinion, then we will we'll find out. I have a way for you to find out whether God did this or I did this. If you really think I did this on my own, then each of you come and bring Ketoret, and we'll see who God picks. And that's basically what he says through this whole thing. But the Parshanim want to say that what Moshe is trying to say to Korach, as he does many times, is he says, let's do this tomorrow, because he wants them to have a chance to cool off, to think about what's going on, to think about what the possible outcomes are, and possibly do tshuva, return from their course of action. And I think that's a very, very important, another important lesson of the parsha, that whenever we are about to embark on a course of action, that it's always best to sleep on it. It's always best to think about it, especially if it's something that's not urgent, immediate, we need some immediate action, which is, there are rare. Obviously, if you're in a burning building, you can't say I'll sleep on it and wait till tomorrow morning. But most of the decisions, or many of the decisions that we make in the course of our lives, don't need to be made spontaneously. They are, when we're talking about important decisions about, where do you send your kids to yeshiva? Where do you want to live so that you'll be in a Jewish community? There are certain types of decisions that all too often we make haphazardly without seriously considering the consequences. And Moshe is telling these people, you're about to embark on a course of challenging God. You ought to think about what that means before you fully commit yourself in a way that's beyond repair. And one would have thought, at least according to those parshanim that say this parsha is in chronological order, and it did happen after the Chet of the Meraglim, that they would have learned not just from the Meraglim, but from the group called the Mapilim, the ones who tried after the decree was promulgated by Hashem that they were all going to die in the desert, that said, no, we're now okay, we made a mistake, we're ready to go up. And Moshe says, no, don't go, because it's not time now. Hashem is not going to be with you. You can't go. One would have thought that the people in our parsha, these 250 people, would have learned from watching all of those events. And that's Moshe's hope also, by saying, well, let's wait till tomorrow. Let's give yourself a chance. Now, right now, you're all caught up in this frenzy of Korach is, rabble rousing. He's getting everybody excited about how we're going to overthrow Moshe. And yet he wants them to reconsider and hopefully step back. Unfortunately, they don't, as we'll see later on, that they continue in their way and ultimately bring about their own demise. But Moshe is trying to lead these people along a path that will save them, even though he doesn't have to. These people are hell-bent on destroying themselves. Moshe has no obligation to try to save them, and yet, because he cares about all of his people, he goes out of his way to try to save them. Not only that, after he's dealt with group one of these malcontents, he goes and tries to deal with group two. Group two, led by Datan and Aviram, and it says in verse 12, as we go down to the second time, it says, "Vayishlach Moshe likro leDatan v'Aviram b'nei Eliyav." Moshe goes out of his way to try to go and approach them, to try to reconcile their differences, to try to get them to understand his perspective, that this is not him, this is God has told him to do this, and to try to save them from destroying themselves. And their answer is lo na'aleh. It's very interesting, their response, their choice of words. It doesn't say lo navo, we won't come. It says lo na'aleh, we will not go up, which is very reminiscent of Hashem's message to the Meraglim, that or the Mapilim, that you should not go up. Lo talu v'lo tilachanu. You cannot go up to Eretz Yisrael. So Datan and Aviram are basically echoing what Moshe said to them by saying, hey, we can't go up, so the only hope for us now is to go back down. And their response is similar, or at least their thought process seems to be very similar to the group at the time of the Raglim who said, Nitna Rosh v'nashuva Mitzrayima. We can't go into Eretz Yisrael because they're too strong. There's only one place for us to go. We're in the middle of the desert. We can't stay here permanently. God is not going to provide miraculously for us permanently. We have to either get to Eretz Yisrael, which now we can't because it's blocked by all these strong people, or we go back to Mitzrayim, where we started out. And that's exactly what they say in verse Yud Gimel. They say to Moshe, it's not enough that you brought us out. You, Moshe, took us away from a land that was flowing with milk and honey. You told us you're going to bring us to a land flowing with milk and honey, but here you've taken us away from Egypt, which they perceived as a land flowing with milk and honey. You're now going to kill us all in the desert. So they're very much throwing a lot of things in Moshe's face that one would have thought Moshe would have just lost his cool. He doesn't. He just prays to Hashem that Hashem, look, they are not starting up with me. They're obviously starting up with you by referring to Egypt by that same terminology that you've referred to this beautiful land of Eretz Yisrael. There's something wrong with their thinking. It's completely out of whack. It's completely offline. And Moshe prays after that. He says, Moshe davens Hashem, Al tefen el minchatam. Don't accept their offering. And he says, which seems very, very strange here at this juncture. Moshe says, I haven't taken any of their donkeys and I haven't done evil to any of them. Seems like a very, very strange response to Moshe, to Hashem. He's saying, you shouldn't listen to these people only because I haven't done anything to them, which seems like a very, very strange response. What it seems that Moshe is saying here is that even though they may not appreciate all that you've given them, they don't even appreciate the fact that I am working on their behalf. So therefore, I don't know what you expect to find in their favor. It seems that Moshe is saying that there is no logical way that they will ever be reconciled with what has happened. They seem hell-bent on wanting to go back to Egypt, where they were, where they had nothing, or where they were slaves. They seem to have conveniently forgotten that. But because it seems, and Moshe is trying to say, I think that they have forsaken Hashem completely in any shape, manner, or form by attacking me as your representative. And that's why he says, don't listen to their tefillah. Okay. After Moshe's offered this tefillah, again, we have Moshe now goes to Korach. Now, again, Korach is group 1, but you'll notice later on that Korach's going to end up in group 2 also. But Korach right now is associated with group 1, the 250 men, and each one is to take a pan, bring ketoret, and Hashem is going to do that. And Korach is not only does, as I said, Moshe tells them, let's do it tomorrow morning, so you'll have time to sleep on it, think about it. Not only do they all show up, and Korach shows up, but in Pasuk Yutet we see Vayakel aleim Korach et kol ha'edah. Korach not only collects these 250 people and keeps them energized that they want to go through with this test, he also seems to gather a whole group of people to the gate of Oel Moed where this test is going to happen. So much so that Hashem says to Moshe, you have to separate yourself and I'm going to destroy all of them. Hashem says that's it. There's no hope left for them. And they say to Hashem, Moshe and Aaron fall back to this prayer to Hashem. Look, this is all Korach's doing. They've all come because Korach is instigating them. If Korach leaves, there'll be nobody left. They all will run. They all will not persist in this rebellion, and that is why in Pirkei Avot it talks about Korach as the instigator of this whole rebellion. Even though clearly, as we go back now to the pasuk that follows this, after they've talked to Hashem about this first group, now they go back to the second group. Hashem says to Moshe, okay, forget about the group that's gathered at Ohel Moed, go back to the group that's now around Datan and Aviram, because it seems that throughout the night, they were also gathering people together to try to convince them to join their rebellion. Okay, Vayoka Moshe gets up, Vayelech al Datan v'Aviram, he goes to them, and the Ziknei Yisrael follow. Vayichlach Rav Ziknei Yisrael. So the Ziknei Yisrael, there seem to be some group of elders who have stayed loyal throughout this. They haven't turned ranks, and they follow Moshe. And Moshe then tells everybody, Suru nami harashaim ha'ela. Remove yourself from close proximity to these people. And don't touch, because you're going to be caught up in their sins if you do. And then ultimately they do. And Moshe now makes this proclamation. We have this long proclamation that Datan and Aviram, because they said lo na'aleh, they're not going to go up. There's only one way for them to be punished, that is to go down. And Moshe says to Hashem, you're going to create something new. The ground is going to open up. It's going to swallow them alive. Not only is it going to swallow them, it's going to swallow every possession they have. And the interesting thing is, we would expect, if we were talking about a natural phenomena such as an earthquake, which can happen, there can be an earthquake that can swallow buildings, swallow things up. But after they swallowed up, it rarely closes so that nothing is visible. And that's exactly what happens. It says, it's like the earth opened up and then closed up completely again. They were gone from the midst of the congregation. After we read about their punishment, the Torah ends in the parsha ends in pasuk lamed hey with the punishment of the 250 men. They are not swallowed by the ground. It says, "V'yesh yatsa me'ed Hashem." A fire comes forth from Hashem, just like it came forth with Nadav and Avihu, and eats and kills the 250 men. Again, it seems similar to the way in which Nadav and Avihu died, that your soul is burned and your body is left intact. And it's interesting because the Parshanim look at these two different punishments for these two different groups. One group was clearly motivated by a desire to return to Egypt, to not go up and raise themselves spiritually, and they are the ones that go down. It seems that the other group, which wanted more holiness, which wanted to come closer to Hashem, dies in a similar way that Nadav and Avihu died, through this fire coming forth from Hashem and literally taking your soul away, leaving your body intact, just removing your soul from your body. So there are Parshanim who want to say that even though they were wrong, they were misguided in that the group of 250 were misguided in that they wanted to come closer to Hashem, and they did not realize that coming close to Hashem has to also have its boundaries and parameters. The way we approach Hashem is through the way Hashem prescribes us to come closer, which means if we're not a Kohen or we're not a Levi, we can come closer through bringing karbanot, but we cannot bring them on our own behalf. We can't sprinkle the dam on our behalf. We can't bring ketoret on our own behalf. We can contribute ketoret, but it's the Kohanim who have to bring it. So there's a requirement and a regulation that has to be adhered to when we are trying to come closer to Hashem. And I think that's really the lesson of the parsha. Another lesson of the parsha is that our goal as Jewish people is to constantly be seeking to raise ourselves, to elevate ourselves spiritually, but within the boundaries and parameters that the Torah sets for us. And when we understand that, that's when we can understand our role, each individual's role, whether we are Kohanim, whether we are Leviim, whether we are leaders in our own area, whether we are parents, teachers, whatever we might be. In each of those realms, we have the possibility of rising in our service of Hashem, of growing in our service to Hashem, and that's what we're supposed to be striving to do. And when we all understand that and doing it within the parameters that Hashem has set, we will be Zocha Bezrat Hashem to Gula Shleim B'Meher V'Yameinu. I thank you all for listening, and I open it up at this point in time for questions, comments, and feedback.